and welcome again. Um, Today I want to talk about the issue of talking about your experiences as an ex-seminarian or an ex-religious. Um, a lot of ex-seminarians and ex-religious don't like talking about their experiences, maybe their um, what happened, why they left, or why they were expelled. A lot of ex-seminarians uh, are so ashamed of talking about their experiences, and maybe it is too, yeah, it is too um, it's too difficult for them, or maybe it is so traumatic, or maybe it is they are so ashamed of it, or maybe they are not comfortable talking about it. As an ex-seminarian, as an ex-religious, it is very helpful to talk about your experiences, especially the ones that register in your memory, the ones that are quite traumatic to you, the ones that affected you in one way or the other. It is very, very important that you talk about them. The nasty experiences, the ones that you disliked so much, but maybe you were not able to talk about them while you were still a seminarian or as a religious. Those unfavorable and unfortunate incidents and experiences that you passed through while in the seminary or while in the religious houses. It is very important that you talk about them. You be able to talk about them freely, without emotion, without anger, without resentment. That is the essence of psychotherapy. The essence of psychotherapy is to relieve those detestable experiences, get them out of your system. Talk about them. If you want, cry. If you want, feel the emotion. Just feel the emotion and be able to be free from them. Just if you are still angry about what happened to you while you were in the seminary or in the religious houses, if you are still angry about them when you talk about them, you have not gotten over them. You have not gotten over them. If there is any incident that happened while you were still a seminarian or while you were still religious, you are still angry about them, when you talk about them, you're still crying about them, or when you remember them, you still cry, then you have not gotten over them. You are still, they are still, you're still grieving, and they are affecting you subconsciously. They are destroying your life from inside. Without your knowledge, they are affecting your decisions. They are affecting your choices. And it is not healthy for you. If you allow this to keep happening, if you allow them to still be in your system, these unexpressed angers, these unexpressed emotions, if you still allow them, bottle them in there, in your subconscious, they are ruining you. You should be able to be free to talk about the experiences you had, maybe the incident that led to your expulsion, the incident that led to your withdrawal. You should be able to talk about them and laugh over them without being angry, without being so heartbroken. Yeah, so if you are still attaching so much emotions to your, while talking about what led to your expulsion, or while remembering the things that happened to you, maybe the injustices you suffered, maybe the malhandling, or the treatment you suffered in the religious houses you were in, or in the seminary you were in, or how you were treated when you were expelled, you went back for your documents, you went to ask why you were withdrawn, and you were, told to meet this person, to meet that person, and you were being, pushed around. If you are still angry about them, the anger and the resentment you have they need to be expressed. Find a way of expressing those anger, those resentments, those negative emotions. Talk about them. Find someone who can understand you, someone who you can speak to. It is unfortunate that the professional services of psychotherapists is not available, or are not available in some societies, especially in Africa, in Nigeria. When I left the seminary, I pretty much, I had a lot of unexpressed emotions. Maybe some things that were happening at the time, I didn't like, but because I couldn't say them out, maybe nobody to listen to me, or some personal issues like, how to start life all over again, the burden, that burden of finding my feet, that burden of looking for help, financial help, that burden of thinking about where my mates are at the time, where they were, where I should have been, that burden of thinking about planning a life that is adhering to a young man of 29, 30 years, as at the time I left the seminary. It was too much for me, but I had no one to talk about them. I had no one to share my concerns and my worries. So I had to bottle those inside, deep down inside me, and I was, it was between myself and my consciousness was thinking about them. And I was, trying so hard to meet up, trying so hard to find my feet, was working so hard. But then I developed some signs, some symptoms. I started having this type of pain at the back, at the back, back, just around, right around the base of the neck, and just the joints, the tendons around the scapula at the back, and appendages. I started developing this painful neurotic pains, and some kind of load kind of pressure, when you carry something that is quite heavy, that type of feeling that you normally have at the base of your neck. I started having this constant pain. I couldn't explain how that symptom started, but it was constantly worrying, or very worrisome to me. And it was sometimes I keep doing like that. Sometimes I will be doing like that, thinking like maybe the muscles there are tensed up maybe, and I will try to exercise my hands, my arm, doing a couple of some exercises, trying to release the tensed up pressure at the back. But it kept going on. So I decided to meet my doctor, and I explained to the doctor about this, this pain and this pressure, tension at the base of my neck and the back and around the scapula and the shoulder, the joints there, the ligaments are so tensed up. So and then also another symptom that I developed was, I started having this pain, around the, what do you call this bone here? Is that tibia? I think the tibia there, like when I'm walking, I just feel this pain here on the tibia. And the doctor asked me a couple of questions about the pain here. He asked my sleeping routine, my sleeping pattern, how I used to lie down, whether I have slept on my neck, maybe. But I couldn't remember sleeping on my neck. And the pain wasn't about, sleeping on my neck, because when you sleep on your neck, the pain will reduce after a couple of days or hours. But days was ongoing. So when he asked me about certain questions, and he started asking me about my personal life and my domestic issues, how I am managing my domestic affairs and that. And I was wondering why this man would be asking me about those questions. What had it got to do with my symptoms that I was presenting at the time? So after asking me about my, my life growing up and my experiences and all that, so I told him a little bit of, where I was at that point, transiting from a religious life to a secular life, and the challenges that I was facing, trying to cultivate the social skills to be able to live as a normal young man in the society. So rather than prescribing painkillers or pain-related medication for me, he told me that I needed to try out something different. I needed to meet with a counselor, a psychologist. I was thinking to myself, what has psychology got to do with this? Mind you, that was the first time I've heard about, talking about meeting a psychologist, a counselor. Not what what I was known to was that, if you want to go for counseling, you go and meet a priest, talk to a priest about your problems, and the priest will pray for you, kind of tell you one or two things, what you should do, what you should not do. It is all related with spiritual matters, prayer life, praying about things, about your situations, and all that, tips, spiritual tips. But this time around, this doctor suggested that I needed to speak to a psychologist. I have never spoken to a psychologist before, so I didn't know what to expect. So I reluctantly accepted to speak to a psychologist. And I was scheduled to see a psychologist. So when I met with a psychologist, the very lovely lady, she went deeper into my life, growing up in my society, growing up as a seminarian, and the challenges, the experiences I had to go through as a seminarian and as a young man in my family, as the last of 7 surviving children in my family, and how I left the seminary and, started for the first time in my life. I sat down with a stranger who knew nothing about my life. I was telling this stranger about my life, and then it occurred to me that there are experiences in the past that I never thought that they were they impacted on me. And I saw myself crying while talking about some of these experiences. For the first time, I consciously recollected, told some stories about my past that I have never spoken to anyone about, I've never talked about. I just buried them. I spoke about growing up in a poor family background. I wasn't able to get the things that I needed. I wasn't able to I wasn't able to afford certain things that I really needed, I wanted. I never thought that those things meant so much to me. Growing up with a father that wasn't able to buy certain things for me, going back to seminary, some things that I needed and I couldn't buy them because my dad had no money to buy them for me. And I found myself crying, talking about these things. And also, I found myself talking about the expectations that I set for myself and the extent that I'm going to meet up with my expectations and the expectations of people around me. what I thought as the expectations of people around me, and what I have thought that these people needed, that I needed to provide for them in order to be free. I was able to talk about the circumstances of my leaving the seminary and the emotional torture that I had to undergo. Some days I will wake up, the rising bell, my last days in the seminary, how drudgingly I was following the program. How I will wake up in the morning, with the rising bell. I will just first of all sit down on the bed and I will cry, shed some tears inside. Why I was still in the seminary. Why should I, when you feel that you don't really need to be here, you don't really want to be here, but you had no inner strength to just get up and leave. So that situation, I found myself, I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness. So these things, these experiences, these things meant so much to me. So they registered somewhere. I was crying, shedding hot tears, recounting these experiences to this stranger. And this psychologist offered as a way forward for me, because she pointed it out to me that I must be suffering, I must be having some emotional battle with adapting to the secular life. That type of experience that you have, learning how to operate computer as an adult, when the youngsters in the secular world, in the secular life, could operate the computer very effectively and efficiently. But you as an adult, maybe you have not seen this computer before, so you met this computer as an adult, just like most adults of my age in my setting. We met computer, in the 90s, 2000s, when we were pretty much adults. So we started learning the computer as adults. In the seminary, we had computer lessons where the computer will stay over there and we will be here and we will be taking notes about what is CPU, what is monitor, what is screen, what is, those things, you are learning them, but you are not operating them, but you are just jotting down the notes for the sake of the exams. At the end of the day, you don't know how to operate the computer. Most of us, we will go on a walk to send an email. We will write whatever we want to send. We will write it as a letter or whatever, write it, and then give to the clerk or the management of the cyber cafe, who will type it for us and send it for us. So pretty much they will read our personal letters and our personal emails, send it for us. So now transfer that to the life after the seminary, coming out as an adult to start learning what your counterparts have already learned and, learned how to deal with and move on. You are still learning it as an adult. So that was the situation I found myself, and it was stressing me out. And the symptoms of the stress were coming out in different forms, in forms of somatic pains, neurological pains. So this psychologist, as a way of going forward for me, she organized, she had to go and look for an association of ex-priests and ex-seminarians. If if there was anything like any association like that around me, to link me up so that I will be able to share my experiences with them, because they will be on the same wavelength to understand my story and understand where I'm coming from. So she did arrange for that and linked me up with an association of ex-priests. And she gave me the details, and I messaged them. She first of all messaged them and told them about a guy who just came out from the seminary and is trying to adapt to the secular life, and he's been finding it difficult. She was wondering if there will be able to meet up and meet up with me and hear my stories and see if there are tips and suggestions of how to handle life after the seminary, after the religious life. So, and then she told them that I will be contacting them. So a kind of a head up for me. So I later emailed this association of priests, ex-priests, and they agreed to meet up with me. And we arranged for a meetup, and it was at a pub. I have never been to pub in my life. So they arranged to meet at a pub. That is like a bar where they sell, drinks, beers and all that. So for the first time, how could ex-priests arrange to meet up at a pub, in the bar? For me, it was a scandal. I had never been to pub then. And going to bar, in my local understanding, going to bar is for people who are irresponsible, people who are not responsible, who are drunkards. They go there to get drunk. So the thought of associating myself with a pub, a bar, for me, it was a scandal. But these people arranging to meet up at a pub. So that was the first for me. But then I thought about it. Well, I was no longer a seminarian, so why not? So I took up the offer, met up with them, and I told them my experience. And incidentally, they experienced most of the things that I was experiencing when they left the priesthood. And they were able to tell me from the words of their experiences how to handle certain things, how to be more open, more tolerant, how to be more forgiving, how to be more out there, how to bring down the walls, the psychological walls. When you leave the seminary, the 4 walls of the seminary, they are still there psychologically, they are still there in your mind, and they are still barricading you from doing certain things that your counterparts, your mates out there are doing. So, being able to tell people my experiences, the bad ones, the good ones, how they are impacting on my emotional life, my psychological life, my physical life. It was so liberating for me. And from there, from then on, I started, being comfortable talking about, my life as an ex-seminarian, my life, because before then, I never wanted anyone around me to know that I was an ex-seminarian. I never wanted any person, my colleagues, my workmates, my whoever, even my flatmates, my whoever, I didn't want in any way for them to find out that I was a seminarian at some point. I was an ex-seminarian. I didn't want that. So I was unconsciously building these walls around me, psychologically, building this, carrying the four walls of a seminary with me everywhere I go. And it was affecting my relationship with my colleagues, with people around me. I wasn't free. There are certain things that they would want to do. I would just take myself out from there because psychologically, the rules and regulations of the seminary were still guiding me. You should be able to bring down those walls psychologically. It is not about the physical. No, it is the psychological. When you are held bondage psychologically, you are really held bondage. But if you are held bondage physically, you can jump over the fence, you can run, you can escape and regain your freedom. But if that psychological barrier is there, you will not regain your freedom. So part of bringing down those walls was, for me, was being able to tell my story, be casual about it, that I was an ex-seminarian, and it wasn't a big deal for me. There was no emotion attached to it. There was no shame attached to it. There was no regret attached to it. There was no stigma attached to it. So I was able to tell people in my former life, I was not used to this type of thing. They understood me, where I was coming from, and sometimes they were quite gentle with me, giving me that patience to meet up, patience to grow, patience to adapt. So when they said certain things and I didn't understand it, and I asked certain questions, they were able to explain to me what it was, what it meant in my own understanding. So they were able to carry me along with them, and I was able to grow up, was able to start cultivating this interpersonal relationship skill. And I was able to talk with people with opposite sex, with foreign people, talk about everything without that that barricade, mental barricade, that mental barrier. I was able to speak to anyone, talk to anyone about my former life, anyone who wants to hear about them, without feeling guilty, without feeling ashamed, without, having all these negative emotions attached to them. So I suggest to you, it will help you, especially in your area of interpersonal skill, to be able to speak about your life, your former life as a seminarian, your former life as a religious. Be able to talk about your former life and have no emotions, negative emotions attached to them. All right. And when you are able to talk about the incident that led to your expulsion, what happened that led to your withdrawal without emotions attached to them, that is when you have overgrown it. You have conquered that. You have conquered it. You have left it behind. But if you are still not comfortable about talking about them, or you are not comfortable talking about them, you are still in bondage. You are still held under the bondage of your former life. So I suggest to you, be able to speak out, speak up, Say things that are paining you. Say things that you underwent that you didn't like. The treatment that you underwent in the seminary that you didn't like. The experiences that you encountered while as a seminarian, maybe on apostolic work or in the seminary. Be able to speak about them. Be free of them. Let them not be your master. Let them not hold you down. Don't allow them to hold you down. Speak about them. Talk to anyone. People who can understand you, talk to them about it. This is part of psychological healing. This is part of psychotherapy. Talk about them. Be free to talk about them. Yeah, somebody was asking me, why are you talking about a seminarian? Why are you talking about your life as an ex-seminarian? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. It is part of me. It is part of what I underwent. It is part of my life. It is part of me. And I am talking about it because it is part and parcel of me. So there is no way you can talk about me today without when I was a seminarian, the part that when the time I was still a seminarian. You cannot remove that from my being, my personality. I was once a seminarian, but now I am no longer a seminarian, and I am able to talk about my life as a seminarian and be comfortable with it without having any emotions of shame, anger, resentment, regret, whatever. So be able to talk about your lives as seminarians, the incidents, the experiences you encounter without feeling bad about them. If there are ones that you need to talk about with the person that is involved, be able to talk about them. Be able to find a way to talk to the person about the incident, what he or she did to you that you didn't like. There are still some people that I need to talk to in my life, in the past, what they did to me in the past. That is still, when I remember them, I don't like them. The reason why I have not spoken to them about it is not because I cannot, but because of distance, because of time. I don't have the time to track them down and speak to them about it. But I know that any time, either by chance or by ordination or by whatever arrangement, if I see them today, I must talk to them about it. I must express myself, my emotions about what they have done to me. That is what it is about healing. Healing from your past encounters, past experiences. If you don't heal from your past experiences, they will subconsciously be ruining your life. They will subconsciously be directing you, sabotaging your effort. They will be sabotaging your effort. So you should be able to deal with your past in order to move on, to move forward. If you don't, your past will still be throwing you back. Your emotional baggages will still be affecting you, both psychologically, mentally, spiritually, sexually, and physically. Try to heal yourself from all aspects of humanity as a person. That will help you to move forward. Thank you so much for your time. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.